Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is part of our Ignite Your Mind Summer Seminar Series. So my name is Faustine Chan. I'm the Business Innovation Manager for BBB serving the Pacific Southwest. We've been holding these webinars just to give our businesses useful tools at this time, just to help them navigate through challenges as well. So we have a great speaker today from Digitopia. We have Frank Cowell. He's the CEO, a digital strategy and execution agency based in San Diego, California area. He regularly works with CEOs, CMOs, and VPs of marketing who are looking to create amazing brand experiences while driving inbound leads. He's a self-taught programmer with a deep understanding of technology. Frank enjoys a unique blend of brand development and marketing savvy that enables him to offer fresh perspectives on often complex marketing concepts that he distills into actionable, easy to understand language. He's energetic and entertaining speaker, and he often presents regularly to regional and national organizations on topics related to branding and digital marketing. So please welcome our speaker today, Frank Cowell.
Thanks for having me, Faustine. It's great to be here. I think I've done a few of these webinars with you folks. So some of you may have already seen me and heard some of my talks. So hopefully I add something new for you guys today. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, so bear with me. Let's hope technology works the way it's supposed to. So I'm going to share that. I'm going to go into present mode. Okay, in the chat window, give me some sort of thumbs up or, yep, we can see your screen, Frank. Let's see, is this in the Q&A here? Faustine, are we good? You see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Great. Let's jump into this, folks. So the title of today's presentation is How to Systematically Unlock Your Organization's Growth Potential. So as Faustine mentioned, I'm Frank Cowell, CEO, author, and speaker. After today's presentation, if you'd like to connect with me, would be happy to engage in additional conversation. You can connect with me on most of the social media channels at Frank Cowell. But to be honest, the best way is just send me an email, frank@digitopia.agency. Would love to hear from you. I want to take a moment to recognize every single one of you that are taking the time out of your busy day, especially in light of the world that we live in today seems to be more and more chaotic with everything from a global pandemic to a lot of civil rights conversations happening, not to mention business is just dang hard anyway, right? So when you add everything else into the mix, I want to just really recognize you folks for taking the time out. You guys are the real MVPs for taking the time to really invest in yourselves and learn more about how you can drive growth with your firm. So here's my goal for today. I want to do three things. I wanted to discuss the challenges of driving growth today. I want to share a systematic digital growth strategy with you. And hopefully, if you've been to my other presentations, I give you something new to chew on. And then also give you a tool to help you implement today's ideas. I'm going to try to do that in a very short period of time. And in that short period of time, I promise not to be this guy right here. We've all seen this guy. This is the guy on the internet who promises you, get rich quick, overnight results. I've got this secret funnel and it's going to drive all this growth for your firm. I'm not that guy. In fact, if you know me and you've been to any of my presentations before, whether online or in person, you know that I'm all about the fundamentals. I'm all about the long game. And in fact, it comes with a warning. And the warning is nothing that I teach and preach is about overnight results. Everything that I talk about, again, is about fundamentals. It's about hard work. It's about rolling up your sleeves and having that commitment and consistency over a long period of time. So if you're here today and hoping that I would share, a quick hack and how to make the cash register ring in 90 days or less, you might be disappointed because that's not the approach I take. But I do promise you, I'm going to teach you things that are very sound, very fundamental. They're backed in relationship psychology. They're backed by simply myself and many of the clients that I engage with actually executing these things. So as Faustine mentioned, I'm the CEO of a company called Digitopia. We're based in Carlsbad, California. If you're ever in the area, we'd love to have you guys come by and visit. You could say that we're a pretty successful digital agency. We help organizations figure out their digital growth strategy across marketing, sales, and service, and process, platform, and people, which we're going to talk about more today. But we weren't always a very successful firm like we are now. In fact, if I go back to when I got my start in digital, quote unquote. In fact, we didn't even call it digital back then. We didn't even call it internet in the very beginning. We called it the information superhighway back in 1997, which is a long time ago. In fact, back then, the way we looked up websites to surf on the internet was with this physical book called the Internet Yellow Pages. And it literally was a book you would go buy at a store called Fry's Electronics or something similar. And you would just browse this really thick book to find websites just to explore, just because it was something to do. You would literally go visit a website about, I don't know, flowers or something, or how to grow cucumbers. And you would do this just because it was fun and it was very novel and interesting at the time. So I say that to give you the idea that I've been doing this a long time. In fact, in internet ages, I'm really, really old. You know, back then when we were attempting to make inroads online, whether it was to, you know, market a piece of information or marketing a business or driving to early e-commerce websites, things were really easy back then. And, you know, you could do a few things and a few hacks and a few tips and a few tricks, and things would work relatively easy. But at some point that started to change, and the results started to not happen and not come the way they once were. And everything was going the right direction until really they weren't. And it had everyone in business running around, you know, just grasping for the latest trick, the latest fix, and looking for their leads. And everyone was kind of desperate because the old tricks just didn't work anymore. And I was in that same boat, you know, trying to figure out what's going to take to get things back to where, you know, they once were. And we had questions around, you know, where was the ROI? Because cost per visit was up, cost per lead was up, acquiring customers, those costs were up, conversion rates were coming down. And by the way, market differentiation just gone, completely shattered. There were a lot of different players in the marketplace offering roughly the same thing at roughly the same price, and it's hard to tell two competitors apart. So that differentiation was just gone. And this was happening not just in my marketplace, but in many. But speaking of my marketplace, if you were to search for digital marketing agency, which is the category I might come up in and with our firm, you know, you're going to get 26,400,000 results. And that's not to say that there are 26,400,000 competitors, but it underscores the point that there's no shortage of information for my buyers, and there's no shortage of information for your buyers as well. In fact, I was kind of like this little girl after all this, just sitting there like really confused. And I feel some of you might be in a similar boat. I talked to a lot of business owners and a lot of executives, and they kind of had this look on their face once they realized too that the marketplace is saturated, it's crowded, it's noisy, it's complex, it's confusing, it's overwhelming. And so we're all just kind of left in a state of shock like this little girl here. So did a little soul searching to figure out, hey, what's the real problem? What's really going on? How can we fix this? And what I realized was that everyone's just caught up in the tactics. You know, there's little to no strategy in play anymore. It was like the internet came along and we all got excited by all the shiny objects and we just forgot strategy. And so everyone's just chasing all these tactics. And to make matters worse, you know, new tools and technologies popped up every other day. This is an example of what the current landscape of marketing technology looks like. This was back in 2018, by the way, folks. So you know it's only gotten worse. So this is overwhelming. So we have all this technology that's supposed to make things easy, quote unquote. But the reality is, when you put all this complexity together, it becomes very overwhelming and difficult. And when you combine that with the fact that new channels are popping up every day, new ways to reach your target audience, and oh, by the way, you feel compelled to play in every one of these channels, that's adding pressure. And then if that wasn't enough, you know, it's estimated that over 400,000 businesses start every single year in the US alone. That's a 2016 statistic. Again, probably only has become worse. And so people are confused, people are overwhelmed, and they're chasing tactics. And what we need to do is really get back to being strategic, right? Like this is what we need to do. As Ryan Gosling here suggests, hey girl, let's get back to being strategic. So that's what I want to talk about today. How can we get back to being strategic as business owners, as business executives, people responsible for driving growth for our firms? And so the key to executing strategically, in my opinion, are systems. Systems are the way out. Systems are how you can get back to being strategic. You know, strategy sometimes is often looked at as this mysterious magical thing that's reserved for people with these special brains. Like you have to be an Elon Musk or something like that to really get strategy. But I don't believe that at all. I believe strategy comes as a result of following a system. So that's what we're going to talk about today is how can you develop a system that allows you to be way more strategic and know why you're chasing a shiny object, know why you're choosing a particular tactic. So why systems? Well, systems lead to clarity. And more importantly, clarity leads to sanity. And I think it's really important to talk about because regardless of the size of your business or the role within your company, today's world is so overwhelming because of everything that I just talked about. We don't have a whole lot of sanity in business anymore, right? We go home and it doesn't leave our minds. We've got, the iPhone here and mobile devices, and it's always with us, right? So we really lack this. And so ultimately, if we can create clarity and sanity in our lives, in our businesses, then we can really have a way forward. We can start to take control of our own destiny. And that happens through systems, in my opinion. I'm going to share with you how we're going to do that here today. So what is the essence of what I call a growth system, right? Because we don't want to talk about just any system today. We want to talk about a growth system, a system for driving growth. Well, the essence of a growth system is aligned marketing, sales, and service across process, platform, and people. That's ultimately what we're after. We're after alignment because we want to eliminate the confusion. We want to bring about clarity and, again, leading to that sanity. So we have to have aligned marketing, sales, and service across process, platform, and people. We're going to dive into each of the areas today of process, platform, and people. Let's talk about process first. What do I mean by that? So when we talk about process, I'm not talking about a marketing process. I'm not talking about a sales process, and I'm not talking about a service process. Rather, I'm talking about an aligned process that is focused on methodically building relationships with specific buyer personas across their entire journey from stranger to fan. That process that aligns all three of those: marketing, sales, and service. And so that's how I want you folks to start thinking about process today. Okay. Remember, process, platform, people. So process, I want you to think about aligning those three so that way you can build relationships with people all the way from stranger to fan, the entire journey, by the way. So one of the things I want you to do to start bringing this to life within your organizations, I want you to start focusing in on one persona at a time. Doesn't mean you only ever have to focus on one, but I want you to focus on one at a time. And I want you to, the reason I want you to focus on one at a time is because most marketing, most engagement, most growth attempts, they try to appeal to the widest audience possible. And this is a huge mistake because people don't react to general messages. They react to specific messages that are about them, right? It's just like when you go see a great movie, when you hear a great story, a story that just captures you. It captures you because it's done in a way that makes you feel like you're in the story. And so people want to hear messages that are about them. But the only way to create that relevance and have that resonate is if you get much more specific so you can have people connect with it, very specific audiences. So going forward, your campaigns or any efforts that you have, they have to be focusing on just one buyer persona and what I call one pain point. You get really specific with that. Here's an example of what I mean. This is an example of a buyer persona, and we've outlined this individual with some specificity around, the company size and his age, gender, and income, and all these things. In fact, if you notice the location there for my Phoenix people, we've got you represented here, even in my buyer persona. We give this person a location, not because we think every single person that we're trying to engage that matches this buyer persona actually lives in Phoenix, but we're trying to bring this person to life. The specificity helps us align on the relationship we're trying to create. It helps us understand there's a real person on the other side of this. And so we define very specific things about this person and who their influencers are and what their goals and challenges are and so on. And once we understand this person at a really deep emotional level, we want to really figure out how we can service them and service them as if they were already our customer. Even during the phases of marketing, even during the phases of sales, we want to service them as if they're already our customer. This is a phrase that I try to drill into as many people as possible on my team, my prospective clients, my clients, anybody who will listen. Really, it's about providing customer service to those that don't yet realize that they're your customers. And if you start approaching your marketing and sales that way, your marketing and sales are going to be much more valuable to people, not just contributing to the noise. To better understand your buyer persona, you need to look at their entire journey. This is a popular, funnel, if you will, awareness, consideration, decision. Many people are familiar with this funnel. And I like to look at these as looking at problems, paths, and providers. And what do I mean by that? Well, awareness means that your buyer persona is becoming aware of the problem they have all the way up to the point of knowing exactly what problem they have. Consideration is becoming aware of the paths that are available to solve that problem, all the way to knowing exactly which path they're going to take to solve that problem. And then finally, decision is about becoming aware of the various providers that can take them down that path, all the way through the selection of which provider they choose to take them down that path. And so what I want you to do is when you look at problems, paths, and providers of your buyer persona, I want you to answer this question. What are the issues? What issues do they have at each of these major stages? What issues do they have around their problems? What issues do they have, or questions do they have around the potential paths they could be taking? What are the issues and questions and concerns around providers, including your brand and your competitors? And so when you write all those out and you do a discovery session around this, you're going to ask yourself this question: which issue do they want to solve more than anything else? And the number one issue that you hone in on, this becomes your focus pain point. And it's really critical that the process of marketing, sales, and service is hyper-focused on this focus pain point. Because in order for you to create relevance, remember, people don't react to general messages, they react to specific messages, and those messages have to be about themselves. And so you're going to do that by focusing in on one single pain point. And this pain point should be the pain point that your organization solves better than anyone else in the marketplace. Let's face it, you probably have a lot of different products and offerings and services, but there's probably very few where you're truly world-class and the best in the world, and you beat your competitors easily. And so this particular pain point should be that one, should be the one that you're great at solving for. Okay. And so if you focus there, you can start to create transformation in this person's life, which is ultimately what you're after. Once you understand your buyer persona and you know which pain point that you're going to solve, next thing I want you to do is I want you to create a relationship-driven experience for this one person around that one pain point, right? We're still in process, by the way. And so to create a relationship-driven experience, some people may look at it, again, as a funnel. I like to look at it as an ascension path, an ascension ladder. That's why I'm going to show you bottom up here. And so at the very bottom, the goal of a relationship-driven experience is to educate that person. It's not to sell to that person. It's not to get them on the phone. The goal is to educate that person. And so what you're essentially saying to this person is, here's how to solve your pain point. Here's how to achieve your desire. And this is where you get to showcase your brand's expertise around that pain point, coming from a place of education, by the way, not a place of promotion, right? You don't say, here's what we do. You say, here's what you can do to solve your problem. And here are some suggestions that we have for you, right? Take the place of educator, not promoter. And so content in this section here can come in a variety of formats like blog posts, videos, infographics, case studies, etc. But again, remember, at the very start of the relationship, your only mission is to educate. Just educate these folks. Because there are a lot of people doing their own education online, and it's best if they're educating from your brand. The next thing you want to do as they engage with your brand and they're being educated, next thing you want to do is empower them, right? So now we're stepping the relationship up to the next relationship level. And you're essentially saying to them, and here's a resource to help you do it. So if you notice, we have a sentence forming. We have a natural conversation, albeit digitally, we have a natural conversation forming. We first said, here's how to solve your pain point. And then we continued that with, and here's a resource to help you do it. Now, the key word here is empower. Now it's time to empower them to take action. Where a lot of people go wrong is they try to step up the relationship by giving their buyer persona more content to consume, more information to read. And that doesn't advance the relationship, unfortunately. What does is when you can help them actually take action to go from a place of education to a place of action. And so you need to make sure that you keep this word empower in mind. Give them something that will empower them to take action. So no ebooks here, right? This is where you want to give them, a template that you use within your organization, maybe a tool, maybe a calculator, maybe an assessment, maybe a checklist, something that allows them to physically get to work, physically start taking action on this focused pain point. And when you put those two together in the right way, they should be really connected. So that way, as someone is consuming your cornerstone content, you can then say, oh, by the way, to make this easier, this topic that we're educating you on, you should download this template. You should get this calculator. You should get this worksheet, this checklist, because now you're empowering them to take action on the education they're consuming. I call this a 1-2 punch, by the way, and it is hands down the number one mistake I see most organizations make when they try to engage people online and they want to try to drive leads in their database. They have these disconnected, meaning they'll have some sort of downloadable offer, some sort of way to engage people and get them into the database, but it's nowhere near related to any of the content that's being produced. It's not related to where that asset is being housed and published. So those two need to be connected, right? So that way you can have that natural sentence. Here's how to solve your pain point, and here's a tool to help you do it. Once you do that, the way you're going to find out if they're ready to progress the relationship further is to inspire them. Here's where you can give them more content to consume, more content to read, additional videos to watch. Because what you want to do now is continue that conversation and say, hey, now see how someone like you achieved X using what we just taught you, using this tool, using this template, using this process, using this methodology. And your goal here is to inspire them. And you're going to inspire them by showing them stories of transformative proof. We oftentimes will call this, these case studies, right? The reason I don't want to focus on the word case studies too much is because most people do case studies wrong. Most people publish case studies from a point of view of bragging, of promotion. Here's what we did. We followed our process. Instead, when you tell stories of transformative proof, yes, it's a case study, but you flip it. Instead, you make the customer in that story the hero. And you, the brand, you're coming along as a guide, right? If we were to use a Star Wars analogy, you're Yoda, not Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker is your customer. They're the hero in the story. You're Yoda. You come along as a guide. And so when you inspire people, you want them to vividly see the hero coming to life, accomplishing these amazing things, tackling the focus pain point, achieving the kind of transformation that your buyer persona is after. Because if they can see themselves in that story, then they'll be inspired to actually take further action. And if you do that right, then you can set up the next step to continue that relationship progression, which is where you'll actually engage this particular person one-to-one. And so if you do the inspire part right and you get them really excited, your big, sales close, your big slick close, the sales tactic that's going to get them on the phone is actually no sales tactic at all. It's pretty simple. All you have to say is, would you like to experience this transformation too? Or some version of that sentence. Would you like to experience this transformation too? If so, take this important first step. And so you'll notice that each of these relationship levels is a setup to the next. I call it a 1-2 punch. So the educate and empower is a 1-2 punch. Your inspire and engage is a 1-2 punch. One sets up the other. If you do the first right, the second becomes that much easier. So if you've ever tried to generate leads online before, if you've ever tried to, fill your sales pipeline by putting out some sort of offer in the marketplace and you've had lackluster results, my guess is because you didn't have content that inspired your buyer persona. If you properly inspire them and get them excited to where they can see themselves in this story, they're more likely to take you up on that offer of engagement. We call that a foot in the door offer, by the way. And that's where you can get them on the phone or on a web meeting or whatever for a consultation, a demo, an audit, a sample. whatever that foot in the door is for your business, but that gets teed up based on how well you inspire them. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to transform them through your core offer. Well, this is just whatever it is that you have to sell, but the job of that core offer isn't to just get them the product they bought. It's not about what the line item on the invoice. It's about the transformation they were originally after. Because remember, they were trying to solve a pain point. And so on the other side of that purchase, they're after the resolution, the solution to that pain point. And so the key word here is transform. And again, the natural conversation here is, if you're really serious and want to step on the gas, let us help you achieve this transformation. So now you've engaged them, and your big sales pitch is, if you're really serious, let us help you. And so all along, you don't have to make any sort of heavy-handed sales pitch. You're addressing people in a relationship-driven way, and moving from one relationship level to the next becomes so natural, and it becomes their idea ultimately. And finally, a relationship-driven experience is not complete unless you build in delight, and you aim to elevate them. So that way you can say, let's not stop there. Let's take your transformation to an even better place. So this is where you're providing, office hours, knowledge bases, better support, automation, discounts and perks, private online communities, exclusive content and events. This is where you're now doing the things that go above and beyond the invoice, right? I've often said, it's what's not on the invoice that creates your brand, that creates raving fans. And so I would challenge you today, if you're here and all you do for your clients, for your customers, is just fulfill what's on the invoice, you're not doing enough, right? Your job is to take it to the final level after you've transformed them and elevate them to a better place. So this is what I call a relationship-driven experience. And this would be the next thing that you would do after you hyper-focus in on your buyer persona. So that's process, right? A process where your marketing, sales, and service teams are all aligned around elevating that buyer persona to the highest levels possible through a connected relationship-driven experience. So once you have process down and you define what that looks like for your organization, the next thing you want to take a look at is your platform. Well, what do I mean by that? So I'm not talking about marketing tech, I'm not talking about sales tech, and I'm not talking about service tech. What I'm talking about is aligned tech that enables a world-class relationship-driven experience for specific personas across their entire journey from stranger to fan. Now you're going to start to notice some consistency here. Process, platform, people, ultimately, we're trying to accomplish the same thing, which is drive that experience for specific people across their entire journey, not just in marketing, not just in sales, not just when they're clients, but across the entire journey from stranger to fan. So I want to talk about some minimum platform standards here. One, you need to have relationship lifecycle tracking and understand across their entire journey. We're going to dive into each one of these. Two, you need to have marketing attribution. So when you're spending to acquire eyeballs and traffic and leads in the database, you have to understand where those come from. And when they turn into customers, do you know what originally brought them into your brand? You need to have contact engagement history. You need data standardization, and finally analytics. So let's jump into each one of these today. So this is this relationship-driven ascension path that I showed you a moment ago, but aligned with each one of these relationship paths, steps, is a life cycle. Now, in your CRM, you may track this with different relationship life cycle names. That's totally fine. This is these are the relationship life cycles that I use, that my team uses in our methodology, visitors all the way up to fans. And so you want to be able, with your tech, to have each contact in your database be updated and aligned on that life cycle. So the moment you hand that contact over to sales, even if sales uses a different system than the marketing system, you need to make sure that that contact record gets updated while that person is having their journey with sales. And then once they become a client, you need to keep that marketing and then also the sales tech updated so those relationship life cycles stay in sync. This is really critical because you can't do that attribution to marketing, which we're going to talk about in a moment, if you don't keep the life cycles updated. This is really critical. You don't have to use necessarily one platform for everything, although I recommend it because it makes all this way easier. Many of you have multiple platforms for marketing, sales, and service. The key thing is to keep the life cycles in sync at minimum. Marketing attribution. At minimum, marketing attribution can be a very complex conversation. There's multiple ways to look at marketing attribution: first touch, last touch, linear, degradation. There's all sorts of ways you can go about doing that. But at minimum, to understand near and long-term ROI on your marketing investments, you're going to want to be able to answer these two questions. One, which campaign originated the contact? And two, which campaigns influence the contact? Again, you can get really, if you're here today and you're an analytics whiz, I get it. We can get really complex when it comes to marketing attribution. But at the bare minimum, we have to be able to answer these two questions, which is, again, really important why your marketing, sales, and service tech have an integration layer at minimum that aligns them on the data. Again, ideally, you have a platform where it's all in one and it handles all of it. But if you don't have that, getting those tech platforms integrated so they truly become one platform for you, so you can answer these two questions. Because what you'll often find is a campaign may not have originated to contact, but that doesn't mean it didn't help create that revenue. We see this time and time again, where sales will be made and an executive team member will say, well, why are we doing this particular channel? It didn't originate any clients. But we're able to show, no, it didn't originate the clients, but it absolutely influenced those clients because there were touch points that we can measure. We can see that contact had engagement with these particular campaigns. And so that helped influence that contact. So you have to be able to answer those two questions. The next thing you want to be able to track is their engagement history, right? It does you no good to just have marketing live in a silo, only to see which email campaigns were sent and which opens and clicks happen. That's kind of like the bare minimum. But what about what web pages they visited? What about, the day they became a sales qualified lead, the day they became an opportunity and a client? What about which products they've engaged in with or offerings they've engaged in with your firm? What about surveys and tickets and whatnot? You want to be able to see all that in one place. And if not in one place, you want to make sure your tech is aligned so that way you have a place to see that. So that way the systems are talking to each other. This is really critical. If you're going to truly be relationship driven in your approach, you have to know the history of the relationship with your brand. Data standardization. So marketing, sales, and service have to agree upon and comply with standards for data around minimum contact record criteria, life cycle stage criteria, and triggers for transfer of contact ownership. Okay. And so what do we mean by that? So minimum contact record criteria. So one of the most unnerving things is when sales lands a client and it comes on over to the service team and the service team says, well, who's the billing contact? Well, I don't even have the phone number for this particular client. So the three organizations within the company have to agree upon what's the minimum contact record criteria and ensure that each unit is upholding that. So that way you have good data integrity. Life cycle stage criteria. So we talked about life cycle stages a moment ago, but each unit has to agree upon what makes for each life cycle stage. I've been involved in organizations where the marketing team and the sales team cannot agree upon what a qualified lead is, right? And then when you get into the nuances of marketing qualified versus sales accepted, I mean, there's all these different nuances. The teams have to agree on what each stage means. That's critical. And then finally, when does transfer of contact ownership take place? And when does it stop being a marketing owned client and become a sales owned client? When does it stop being a sales owned client? And when does it start being a services owned client? It's important to agree and understand on these 3 points. And that's critical so that way your data can be clean, standardized, and have that integrity. Because if you don't have data integrity, you can't rely upon the data that you're getting out. Finally, analytics. You need analytics that's going to look at the entire journey as well, all the way from people when they start their sessions, their website sessions with your brand, all the way through to becoming a client. How much time do they spend in deal stages? What are their referral sources, and so on. Having analytics that go above and beyond just Google Analytics. Google Analytics is great, by the way. It's a fantastic tool. It's free to use. It's an amazing tool, but it's not a relationship-driven approach, and it certainly can't give you the insights across the entire spectrum and have you drill down into products, have you drill down into offerings, have you drill down into sales process. So being able to do that within your tech is really critical. That only can happen though if you have the data integrated and you agree upon those data standards, as I mentioned a moment ago. So that's the fifth component of what you want to talk about. So here's the thing that we're after. We're ultimately after insights, because analytics really are like a lamppost, which is this, as the saying goes, just good for leaning on. And so you need insights to be able to glean intelligence from the data, because you can look at reports until you're blue in the face, but it doesn't mean a whole lot unless you can derive the insights from it. So that means taking time to sit down, analyze your platform, analyze the data, figure out what's happening. And so you're going to want to have some sort of digital analyst or strategist in-house, someone who's responsible for looking at that, or working with a firm to do that. But it's really critical that you get the insights as to what that data means. And once you have alignment and insights as your foundation, then you can methodically start to deploy what I call enablement features. So now this is taking the minimum tech that I just talked about, and now empowering your team to do more, enabling your team to do more. So what is my definition of enablement? This is my definition, by the way. It's technological features that allow you to increase efficiencies and personalize interactions across marketing, sales, and service at scale, by the way, where you can do this at scale. So let's look at a few features that that can enable your team, that are available in some of these enablement technologies. So in marketing, some of the enablement technologies are things like content publishing, lead capture, campaigns, live chat automation, and so on. In sales, deal tracking, templates, document libraries, quotes, automation. And in service, you could be doing things like ticketing and knowledge base, doing team email, which is a really cool feature, doing surveys, live chat, also automation. And then the underpinning of all of that, by the way, is CRM. So a lot of people have a misconception that CRM equals marketing or CRM equals sales. But the correct definition is that, again, it's customer relationship management is what that stands for. And so the R is really critical, the relationship. And so as I've been saying through this whole presentation today, the entirety of the relationship is what's critical. And so the underpinning of good CRM means we can track all of this across marketing, sales, and service. So that way we can look at the engagement history, we can manage the activity, we can manage life cycles, generate lists, and so on. Finally, and we're on the home stretch here, let's talk about people. So we've talked about process, we talked about platform, let's talk about people. By the way, if you're feverishly taking notes, don't worry. I believe we're going to have a copy of this presentation or recording of this presentation for you folks. And also have an offer for you guys to, follow up with me afterwards and ask some questions. So let's talk about people. So what do we mean by people? Well, we're not just talking about your marketing team. We're not just talking about your sales team. And we're certainly not just talking about your service team. What we're talking about is an aligned team that's focused on driving growth and building relationships with specific buyer personas across their entire journey from stranger to fan. And as I mentioned earlier, again, the theme continues. This alignment about building relationships with specific people across their entire journey with your brand from stranger to fan. And so here we're talking about the team that's aligned to make that happen, and the team that's aligned and focused on driving growth, by the way. And when you do that, you're going to develop what I call a growth team. And so, yes, you still might have your separate marketing department, your sales department, and your service team. You're still probably going to have that within your organization. But if you can get those people together on a regular basis and dub them the growth team and have representatives from each of those areas, now you're going to start to change the dynamic in your organization. You're going to start to have everyone focused on growth, which is a huge deal, by the way, because so many people today show up to their jobs and they think that their job is to do marketing. They think their job is to do sales. They think their job is just to deliver the offering, when the job is to drive growth for the organization. And the way you're going to do that is by making your clients successful, making your customers successful. And you'll do that if you become relationship focused and become obsessed about that entire journey. So that's what the growth team should be about, is how can we bring that to life within this organization so we can create that transformation and elevation that our buyers are after. Here's an example of what we mean by a growth team. A growth team consists of people talking about strategy, people developing content, getting it published, people that are focused on the engagement with that content and the brand, and then finally, people that are focused on platform, driving the tech and keep it maintenance and keeping it implemented and up to date. And so you notice on the strategy side, ideally you have someone, this is what we do, by the way, so yours doesn't have to look exactly like this, but what we do is we have somebody who is, kind of like the digital head, the strategic lead for the entire digital growth experience. And what we require is that there's a representative on the executive team, or from the executive team for each of these major areas, whoever the GM is, whoever the person leading the charge, the person that's the head of marketing, the head of sales, and the head of service. It's critical that these people are meeting, at least once a month as part of the growth team. And they're talking about, okay, who are these buyer personas? What's the one that we're going to own? We're going to, serve them better than anyone in our marketplace. And what problem are we going to solve better than anyone in our marketplace? And so each of these people provides critical insights and feedback into the understanding of the customer and to the understanding of the kind of value that person's after. And so those people make up the strategy team. And then on the content team, you have people who are leading content strategy and producing and designing that content out. But it's really critical that the subject matter experts on your team are participating in this content process. Because let's face it, if you just have your marketing team try to put up a blog post about the thing that your organization's great at, it's probably not going to be nearly as great as if you just have your subject matter experts draft the content, be available for an interview, review content, provide their input, take a 1-minute selfie video, explaining something, or answering a question, one single question within your space. And so the subject matter experts are really critical to be engaged and have them understand and buy into the fact that they're not there to just do their job, quote unquote, and actually produce the widget or to, produce the offering. Their job is to contribute to the entire experience so that way the knowledge that's in their brains can get out to the marketplace. Finally, the engagement or the engagement column here is about the people on your team that are going to take all of that content and they're going to get it. They're going to mobilize it. They're going to get it into the marketplace. They're going to create engagement with people who are already in your database and who you're nurturing. And so those people are doing things like advertising and outreach and email marketing, and that's the engagement team. And then finally, your platform team, those are the technical people that are ensuring everything works, the automation's happening, your website's up to date, there's support on implementation and so on. So this is what I would call a growth team. And I think it's really critical to start looking at your organization and asking yourselves, A, do we have a growth team? And B, who should be on our growth team within the organization? And I would start there. Identify the head of each area at minimum. Just start there. Identify the head of each area and agree to get together once a month and talk about who are we driving growth with? What problems do we want to solve? How do we want to be better than everyone else? And let's pick very specific buyer personas and very specific pain points. And let's figure out a way to provide content, resources, information, and experiences that solve that better than any of our competitors, better than anyone else on the planet. And once you start doing that, if you start real basic, you'll start to create a growth team for your firm. If you do all this creates what I call digital utopia, right? This creates this place where you have aligned marketing, sales, and service across process, platform, and people. When you accomplish that, you reach this place that I call digital utopia, which is based on a methodology that we created called the Digital Utopia methodology. It's a digital growth strategy that allows people to naturally move from one relationship level to the next, from stranger to fan, as I've been talking about. And we're pretty passionate about helping organizations put this kind of methodology into play within their organization. And so one of the things that I want to share with you folks today to help you implement the types of things that we're talking about today, there's so much more involved than what I could have shared today. But one of the tools I want to tell you about is a blueprint tool that's part of this methodology. And it's a tool for identifying all of your buyer persona focused campaigns, content, offers, and engagement activities in one easy to understand view. So you're familiar with the buyer persona view here that I showed you earlier. And so this is part of that blueprint. There's a buyer persona side, and then you have what I call the experience side. So that's where you'll define that relationship driven experience for that one person around that one pain point. And you're going to get a snapshot of the various engagement activities that you're going to engage in to bring that buyer persona into your experience. And so it's a strategy tool. So that way you can quickly at a glance see how it all fits together. And more importantly, make sure that everyone on the executive team understands what that experience is about instead of having to jump into, 5 levels deep of a PowerPoint deck or a Google Analytics report. If you'd like to learn more, if you'd like to get a free copy of that blueprint and learn more about the methodology, also have a book based on that where you can dive into it and learn a great deal about how to employ everything I just taught you within your organization. Visit buildingyourdigitalutopia.com. Again, get a copy of the blueprint for free. I'll have links to where you can get the book. We'd love to see you do that. And of course, if you have any questions about it, you can always shoot me an email, which I'll share with you here at the end again. So if you'd like to get some help figuring out your digital growth strategy, I want to leave you with an offer to help. And also going to save some time at the end here to answer questions. So I'm not going to just bail out after this. So if you'd like to get some help and figure out how to, what this might look like within your organization, I want to offer you a free digital growth consulting session. All you have to do is email me and say, I'm ready to do this. There's no form to go fill out. There's no funnel I'm going to put you in. Just shoot me an email. Say, Frank, I'm ready to do this. I'm going to make sure that I get you paired up with one of my top strategists who will do a, no obligation, no sales pitch consulting session to really help you figure out where you stand with process, platform, and people, and who do you have on your team that you might be able to engage into that process right away. And because we're huge fans of helping people get the most out of the resources they already have. So if you'd like to take advantage of a consulting session like that, just shoot me an email and say, hey, I'm ready to do this. All you have to do is send me an email, frank@digitopia.agency, frank@digitopia.agency. Would love to hear from you. Again, I'll set you up with one of our top strategists who will spend an hour with you and at no charge, no obligation. And so with that, thank you for having me. Again, if you want to get in touch, you can connect with me on most of the social medias at Frank Cowell. Again, shoot me an email, frank@digitopia.agency. Hope you guys learned a ton from this today. Again, if you have questions, I'm going to stick around to answer those questions. Or if you have to bail, just shoot me an email. We're happy to answer additional questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Frank. So we have a question about business analytics. How often should a business owner check their analytics?
Okay, so business owner. So that's a great question. So what I would recommend is that whoever you're working with, whether it's you have an in-house team or you have an out-of-house team, at minimum, you should be looking at that monthly. But if you're getting the right kind of analytics, and it's not Google Analytics, it's more growth analytics, which I talked about, you want to look at that weekly. So I look at my dashboards, which, go above and beyond what we talked about today. I looked at those almost daily, right? Because I'm looking at the growth analytics. I'm looking at the big picture of the business, not just how many clicks did we get on a campaign. If you're an owner, I really wouldn't be looking at how many clicks you got on a campaign. You want to look at the growth analytics. In other words, where are people at in the journey with your brand at the macro level? And how are people moving through that experience? And so if you're starting to see that there's a lack of movement, then that becomes something that is of concern. And you can start to ask questions of your marketing, sales, and service teams, your growth team, and figure out how you can create more movement in that experience. But I would look at them no less than monthly. Ideally, you're looking at those weekly.
Great, thank you. Marie asks, I'm currently tracking customers on an Excel spreadsheet, but are there any programs that I should look at as my clientele base grows?
So I don't want to lead you astray. There's a lot of different pieces of software out there. So what I'd recommend, you said it was Marie, shoot me an email and we're happy to point you to one or a few that might work for you, because every industry, every business model is a little different. I'd be hesitant to recommend one, and it's just not a good fit for what you're doing. You might be e-commerce, you might be professional services, you might be retail. And there's so many nuances, but if you shoot us an email, tell us a little bit about your situation, what kind of business, will make a recommendation. I have a favorite. I'm biased. I don't want to promote that here because that's not the purpose of today. But Marie, if you shoot us an email, tell us about your situation, we'll make a recommendation. And that goes for anybody, Frank, at digitopia.agency. Just shoot an email. Happy to make those recommendations. And we'll be unbiased in that too. Because if you say, hey, we're e-commerce and we're this and that, I'm not going to recommend one of my favorites. I'm going to recommend something that's very appropriate to your situation. And by the way, nothing wrong with tracking customers in Excel. The fact that you're tracking is a great sign. The fact that you're doing something is a great sign. I can't tell you how many organizations I've come across and they don't do any tracking, or maybe all their customers exist in their project management system. And project management systems aren't relationship management systems. So there's no way to leverage that data. At least in Excel, it's what we call discrete data, meaning it's each of the fields is discrete and identified in their separate columns. And so you can eventually port that into a CRM and it can be actionable. If it lives in some sort of project management system, the discrete data that's there isn't real actionable from from an engagement standpoint, if you want to leverage that data to try to create engagement with those people.
So it looks like Marie says it's a small retail business. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Okay, so small retail business, I would look into something that's definitely retail focused. There are systems out there that can focus in on retail specifically. One of my favorites is HubSpot. That very well could work for you. It depends on what your POS is, Marie. Ideally, you would have something where the POS integrates with HubSpot or whatever CRM that you pick. But I would start with your POS, and if you're married to your POS or you love your POS and you don't want to get rid of the POS, then I would start finding platforms that natively integrate with your POS, because that's going to make your life a whole lot easier.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other questions. Marie says thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Marie, shoot us an email. Let us know what your POS is. Happy to dig into that further with you. One of my strategists is really great at hunting and figuring out the various systems and helping find what's going to work for you.
Okay, so I don't see any other questions. So if anyone else has any follow-up questions, please reach out to Frank. His team is definitely knowledgeable and available to help. So thank you very much, Frank, for taking time out of your busy day to help us present a webinar today. We appreciate your knowledge and your experience in taking the time. This webinar was recorded, so if you miss any part of it, if you need to rewatch it, it will be posted 1 to 2 business days on events.bbcommunity.org. Thank you everyone for attending. Please stay safe out there and have a great day.
Faustine, thanks for having me. Everyone, thank you for attending. It was great to be here with you all.